So I'm DB. I've been keeping exotic animals, snakes, turtles, frogs, all manner of invertebrates, you name it, for over 15 years now, and it's what I'm all about. It's what I love doing. And after spending a lot of time in the online communities for the animals I keep, it's come to my attention that there's just a crazy amount of misinformation out there on how to even provide basic care for a lot of the really popular animals in the hobby. So I figured I'd make this YouTube channel to put some good information out there and help out anyone who's just starting out and wants a decent source of info on how to care for the new pet. So what I'm going to be talking about today is the rosehair tarantula. Easily the most common tarantula in the pet trade. A lot of misinformation out there about them. So I'm going to get her out of here. I'm going to talk about basic care, feeding, husbandry sort of things, and a couple of the misconceptions that surround this particular species. So a couple of things you want to have on hand before you work with any sort of invertebrate that's venomous at all. Catch cup. So this is just basically a deli cup with some ventilation in the top. This is actually the one she was shipped to me in. And something to direct the animal. So what I use is the butt end of the tongs to just kind of guide her to where I want her to go. Because as you'll see, you don't want your hand right there at them, and they don't want it there either, and they make that known. I avoid using the pinchy end just because, if you twitch, if they make a sudden movement, it would just be too easy to hurt them. I've seen other people use paintbrushes, even a long piece of grass, just anything to kind of nudge them in the direction you want them to go. So before I kind of break down her enclosure and show you guys what I have in here, I'm going to take her out. Alright, open it up slowly so as not to jar her at all. Alright. Hey, sweetheart. I'm going a little trip, alright? I'm going to need you to walk the other way. No, don't walk up your log. Walk into this cup. Come on. Just calmly back up a little bit. Yeah, you're doing good. Don't try to bite the tongs. It's not going to get you anywhere. Now back up a little more. A little more. You're doing so good. You don't care what I'm saying. You just want me out of your face. That's totally understandable. Alright, you're mostly in the catch cup. So I'm just gonna plop this lid on there. I'm sorry you guys can't really get a good view of this. I have kind of a crappy setup. Just using my webcam. Alright. So she is now safely in the catch cup. I wish this camera could do her justice because she is a beautiful animal. You can see she's pretty big. Alright, gotta set her off to the side now. So as I was picking her up, you heard me telling her not to attack the tongs. That is one of the misconceptions about this species, is that they're slow, they're docile, they're easy to deal with. No, they're popular because they're hard to kill. And they make it through to the pet stores in the highest numbers, and they're cheap. That's why they're popular, not because they have a great temperament, because they actually have a reputation for being a little bit psychotic. And my other tarantula, so New World tarantulas have a defensive mechanism that involves using their back feet to flick hairs off their abdomen. And they can get in your eyes and irritate you, but that's pretty much harmless. And that's typically what New World tarantulas do when they're threatened. Rosehairs have a tendency to just straight up into a threat posture and want to sink their fangs into you. Not all of them do that. It's not all of them that have that personality, but a lot of them do, and a lot of people get them and are not ready to deal with a potentially aggressive spider. So that is something to think about. She was my first tarantula, but I have a lot of experience with things that want to bite me, so I knew what I was getting into. So as I show you her enclosure, I'm going to try not to disturb her webbing, because they actually feel their surroundings through their web. they're pretty much blind. So air vibrations and vibrations that hit their web are really how they assess their surroundings. So if you completely disrupt their web, they are not going to be happy about it. So I'm going to avoid doing that. So I'll take her water dish out to show you. As you can see, it's just a simple metal water dish. Have some rocks in here, and it's basically filled with rocks and surrounded with water to just above the level of the rocks. And that is because tarantulas are not good swimmers. They can drown in very little water. It's not super common, but it can happen. And the rocks just completely eliminate that risk. So if you have a water dish in there, make sure you've got something to keep the tarantula from submerging itself in the water. Over here, I'm just going to lift this up because, again, I don't want to destroy all her webbing, and she has it pretty heavily webbed around her hide. You can see I have a large piece of cork bark over here, leaned up against a wall, and she goes under there when she feels threatened or she just wants to hide out. She takes her food under there a lot right after she grabs it. You might want a little more extensive hide if you've got them out in the open. I keep mine in a bookcase, so they're already, you can see here, my invertebrate bookcase. So they are pretty closed in. They're, they're kind of surrounded by a solid wall on all sides, and that makes them feel a little more secure. Also, the top is of a solid color, so she feels a little more secure. They don't need a lot of daylight. So as far as bedding goes, you can see I've got an inch or two of cocoa fiber in here. It looks very thin on this side because she's been excavating. They do that. That's fine. A lot of people want to know, what humidity do I keep it at? Bone dry. Just that simple. Even out of the bag, it's honestly a little bit too wet. I'd put it in another container and let it dry out for a day or two before I put it in for the spider. I didn't do that when I first got her. I thought it would be dry enough, and she spent the first 2 or 3 days until it dried out just hanging on the wall. And actually, she's kind of doing a good wall hang right now in her little deli cup, but it's basically when they climb up on the wall and hang out and just avoid touching the substrate. And that's a sign of stress. So if you have one that's wall hanging a lot, maybe look at your husbandry, double check everything, and make sure it's on point, because that generally means they're not very comfortable with something in their surroundings. Put you back down here again. Alright, so that's humidity. As far as temperature goes, as long as you are wearing clothes that are comfortable in your house and you feel fine, your tarantula is probably fine. They're from a part of the desert in Chile that, gets below freezing at night, above 100 degrees during the day. Yeah, they are in a burrow typically, so that helps regulate it a little bit. But they're all right with a range of temperatures. So, I'd say honestly anything between 65 and 80 is perfectly fine. You don't have to fine tune it. She does really well. My reptile room stays at an ambient 75 to 80 degrees, and I've never had any problems with her. She seems to like it. Eats regularly. That is another problem with rose hares. They should be fed about once a week. I typically feed her either one really large cricket or a couple smaller crickets every week, and as you can see, she has a perfectly healthy abdomen size. They are not known for feeding well. I got lucky with her. The only time she ever refuses food is right before she goes into a molt. They're known for fasting for really extensive periods of time, like up to a year. And there's really nothing you can do except occasionally offer food. Don't offer food every day. If they're fasting, they get kind of, accustomed to it, and they don't react to it as much. Don't offer food more than once a week if you have a fasting tarantula. What else? What's another common issue that people run into? Okay. So when you get one from a pet store, you're probably going to end up getting a mature male. That is because, breeders, they want to keep the females. They're more valuable. They get a better market price. They're used for breeding. The males die right after they hit maturity. They might have maybe 6 months left. That's kind of at a stretch. And a lot of the males end up at pet stores because people at the pet stores have no idea how to sex a tarantula. I might cover how to sex using molts later, but if you are looking at a mature male, you can look at the pedipalps. So, let's see. You can kind of see these little appendages right here that my finger is over. Those are the pedipalps. They're in front of the foremost pair of legs, right next to the tarantula's mouth. And in the female, they're going to look kind of slender and basically just like short legs. Hey Moose, I see you back there. That's my python. In males, they're going to kind of be swollen. They'll look almost like they've got a pair of boxing gloves on. And if you see that, don't get that spider, man. Just don't do it. It's going to run around and act crazy for a couple of months, hyper aggressive probably, because he's looking for a lady. He just wants to mate. And then he's gonna stop eating, might never eat for you if he's already at that point, and then he's gonna die. Not a fun pet experience. Now the females, they can live for 20, 30 years. They're pretty hardy animals. So not a impossible beginner tarantula, but if you're kind of iffy on spiders and you're not sure how calm you're going to be around one that's potentially aggressive, I'd recommend something like maybe a curly hair. They're closely related, but they're a lot calmer than the rose hairs. Mexican red knee or Mexican red leg, anything in that same genus. I have a Mexican red knee and he's super calm. I'm trying to think of any more. Those are the only really good beginner tarantulas that I can think of that you might see commonly. You see a lot of avicularia, so those are the pink-toe tarantulas. And not a great beginner tarantula just because they're very sensitive, and if you don't have the husbandry on point, they can just drop dead on you suddenly. So, probably not a good first exotic pet or first tarantula. I'm trying to think if I'm skipping over anything, and I think I've covered pretty much all of it. So, one last look at this pretty lady. It looks like a blob on my crappy webcam. Really need to get a better camera, do her justice. Alright, sweetheart. I'm going to take the lid off. I'm going to walk out calmly and not try to kill everything. Alright. Come on, you're home. Come on, scoot on out. Scoot on out. You can do it. Yeah, you know where you are. Yeah. A lot easier getting you out of there than it is getting you in. Alright. So, that's my video on basic rose hair care and husbandry and mythology. Alright. Hope I'll be making more of these.